November
You
14th,
won't take us!
2087.
Please,
Ironwood
Fight
Fortress,
now! Fight
Montana
back now!
Rockies. 40 years after the world
we have
ended,
to keep moving.
two
I can
women
stand.
knelt in
Let's
chains.
go.
Stay close
Seraphine
to me.
Blackwood,
Right behind you.
29 years old.
As you
Scar
can see,
running
the
down
scan
her
confirms
right
the anomaly.
cheek like a
The
lightning
progression
strike.
is stable,
Black
but we
hair
must
braided
proceed.
tight against
Agreed.
her skull. Hands that had killed 37 raiders. Arms that had carried wounded soldiers 3 miles through snowstorms. Eyes that had watched men die and never looked away. Baron. Marin Steele, 31. Shoulders broad as a man's. Short brown hair streaked with premature gray. The architect of 70% of Ironwood's defenses. The woman who had calculated angles and trajectories and saved 200 lives with mathematics alone. Baron. In a fortress of 847 souls clinging to survival in the ruins of America, these 2 words carried the weight of execution. The law was simple, brutal, necessary, they said. 3 years without a child meant death. Because resources were finite, because every mouth that consumed without producing was a drain on the whole. Because in the arithmetic of extinction, sentiment was a luxury no one could afford. Seraphine and Marin had 72 hours left to live. But a stranger was about to ask one question that would split the fortress in half, trigger a war, and prove that sometimes the cruelest laws are built on the simplest lies. This is the story of 2 women who refused to die for being broken, and the man who proved they never were. The council hall had been a concrete bunker once, before the collapse, before the plagues and the bombs and the slow starvation of civilization. Now it served as courthouse command center and the place where Ironwood decided who lived and who died. 7 people sat behind a table made from shipping pallets, weathered faces, hard eyes, survivors all. At the center sat High Commander Marcus Drummond, 58 years old, gray beard cropped short, hands scarred from 4 decades of labor and war. He wore the weight of leadership like a stone around his neck. Heavy, constant, crushing. And 2 months ago, he had buried his only son. To his right, War Chief Cade Merrick, 45, lean and hungry looking. 3 daughters lost to starvation during the winter of 2081. A man who had learned that mercy was just another word for suicide. The other 5 elders said nothing. Their votes had already been cast in private. This trial was theater. The ending had been written before the first witness spoke. Seraphine and Marin knelt on the concrete floor. Steel shackles connected their wrists to iron rings bolted into the foundation. The posture of the condemned. The position of the guilty. Behind them, 400 members of Ironwood Fortress watched in silence. Cade stood. His voice echoed off bare concrete walls. Seraphine Blackwood, 3 years, 4 male partners selected by the council. 0 pregnancies. Do you dispute these facts? Seraphine lifted her chin. Her voice came out steady, controlled. No. Marin Steele, 5 years, 6 partners, 0 pregnancies. Do you dispute these facts? Marin's jaw clenched. A muscle twitched beneath her left eye. No. Cade paced. His boots clicked against the floor. Deliberate, rhythmic, the sound of inevitability. The Fertility Act of 2067 is clear. Women between the ages of 25 and 40 who fail to produce a child after 3 years of documented effort are deemed unproductive. Resources allocated to the unproductive are resources stolen from the viable population. He stopped directly in front of Seraphine. You have saved lives, Blackwood. No one denies this. You are a warrior, a defender of Ironwood. He turned to Marin. You have designed defenses that kept us alive, Steele. Your mind has value. Your service is recognized. A pause long enough to let hope flicker, long enough to make the next words hurt more. But past service does not excuse biological failure. The law exists because without it we die, all of us. Children are our future. Women who cannot bear them are a burden we cannot carry. Marcus Drummond had not moved, had not spoken. His eyes remained fixed on the table in front of him, as if by not looking at Seraphine he could pretend this wasn't happening. Seraphine had been 11 when Marcus found her, orphaned by plague, half-starved, feral. He had taken her in, raised her, taught her to fight, to read, to think. His son Jonah had loved her from the time she was 16, followed her around like a lost dog. She hadn't noticed him for years, too focused on training, on proving herself worthy. Then one day she had looked up and really seen him. Not Marcus's son, not her childhood companion, but Jonah, 27 years old, kind eyes, gentle hands, a future. They had been engaged, planning a wedding, planning a life. 2 months ago, a raider ambush had put a bullet through his chest. He had died holding her hand, bleeding out on the wasteland dirt. His last words, "I'm sorry I won't get to meet them." The children they would never have. Except Seraphine carried a secret, one she hadn't told anyone, not even Marin. She was 6 weeks late, but she had been late before. Stress, grief, the body shutting down under trauma. She didn't dare hope, didn't dare tell Marcus that she might be carrying his grandchild, not when hope could be the cruelest thing of all. Now Marcus sat silent while other men decided if she would live or die. The woman he had raised, the fiancée of his dead son, the closest thing to a daughter he had ever claimed. Cade's voice cut through the stillness. The council has deliberated, 7 votes cast, the verdict is unanimous. He looked at Seraphine, then at Marin. Guilty of unproductive status. Sentence is death. Execution will be carried out at dawn on November 17th, 72 hours from now. The words landed like stones into still water. Ripples of murmurs spread through the crowd, some approving, some uncertain, all accepting. This was how it worked. This was how they survived. Seraphine closed her eyes, not in despair, in calculation. 72 hours, 3 days. Enough time to think, to plan, to wait. The voice came from the back of the hall, young, uncertain. A guard named Iris, 19 years old. She stood next to a man in chains, a stranger, thin, wearing salvaged clothes and wireframe glasses held together with electrical tape. The prisoner stepped forward. Iris tried to pull him back, but he shook her off. Cade turned. His hand went to the pistol at his hip. "Who are you?" The stranger's voice trembled, but he spoke anyway. "My name is Dashiell Kane. I'm a doctor. And you're about to execute 2 women for the wrong reason." Silence crashed down like a hammer. 400 people held their breath. Cade's hand stayed on his weapon. "The wrong reason," he repeated. His voice carried the edge of a blade. "Enlighten us, outsider." Dashiell Kane swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed. Sweat beaded on his forehead, despite the November cold seeping through the concrete walls. He was 34. Before the collapse, he had been doctor. Dashiell Kane, Johns Hopkins Medical School, specializing in reproductive endocrinology. He had published 7 papers, taught 300 students, saved careers and marriages and lives with knowledge that seemed now like magic from a dead world. For 3 years, he had wandered the wasteland, mapping communities, collecting data, searching for patterns in the chaos of post-collapse fertility rates, and running from the memory of his sister, Emma, 27 years old, executed by the Carolina clan for barrenness. Dashiell had found her medical records 6 months too late. Endometriosis, treatable, curable. She had died because no one had looked, because assumption was easier than examination. Now he stood in another concrete room, watching another council condemn another woman, and the weight of his sister's ghost pushed words out of his mouth before fear could stop them. "You're executing them for infertility," he said. His voice grew stronger, steadier. "But you've never proven they're infertile." Cade's eyes narrowed. "They've tried for years, with multiple partners. The evidence," Dashiell interrupted, "proves nothing except that pregnancy didn't occur. It doesn't tell you why." He looked at Marcus, at the elders, at the 400 faces watching him. "Before the collapse, I studied reproductive medicine. Infertility isn't simple. It's not just yes or no, fertile or barren. 40% of infertility cases are male factor. 40% are female factor. 20% are combined or unknown." His words landed like grenades in the silence. "You've never tested your men. You've never checked hormone levels, sperm counts, genetic compatibility. You've never examined these women for treatable conditions. You're executing them based on assumption, not evidence." He pointed at Seraphine and Marin. "That's not justice. That's murder by ignorance." The murmur that swept through the crowd was louder now, uncertain, questioning. Women leaned forward. Men shifted uncomfortably. Cade's face flushed red. "You dare accuse Ironwearing Woods warriors?" "I accuse your science," Dashiell said, "or rather your lack of it." An elder woman stood, Dr. Ilara Cross, 70 years old. Before the collapse, she had been an obstetrician. She had delivered 200 babies in her career. In the 40 years since she had delivered 63, each one a miracle, each one a burden. Her voice was dry, brittle, like old paper. "The outsider speaks truth. We have no equipment to test male fertility, no lab to analyze hormones. We make do with what we have." "Which is why you're wrong," Dashiell said. He turned to Marcus. "Commander, you're about to kill 2 of your best people based on incomplete information. Give me 72 hours. Let me examine them properly. If I'm wrong, kill all three of us. But if I'm right, he let the sentence hang. Marcus Drummond finally looked up. His eyes met Seraphine's. For the first time in the entire trial, he saw her. Really saw her. The girl he had raised. The warrior she had become. The woman his son had loved. His voice came out rough, scraped raw. What are you proposing? Dashiell took a breath. Medical examination. Both women. Through the old ritual of verification. I need access to your medical supplies, whatever equipment you've salvaged. 3 days. If I can prove they're capable of bearing children, you repeal the sentence. Cade slammed his fist on the table. This is absurd. He's a stranger, a prisoner. You can't. Can't what? Seraphine's voice cut through the chaos. She had been silent until now, kneeling, waiting. Now she spoke. Can't give us a chance to prove we're not defective. She looked at the crowd, at the women who watched with desperate hope, at the men who looked away in shame or anger. How many others have you killed under this law? How many women died because you never bothered to check? The question landed like a slap. Marin spoke for the first time. Her voice was quieter than Seraphine's, but it carried. I've designed every defensive position in this fortress. I've calculated trajectories and sight lines and kill zones. I think in numbers and probabilities, in hard facts. She looked at Cade. You're making a decision based on incomplete data. That's tactically unsound, strategically stupid. She turned to Marcus. If the doctor is wrong, you've lost 3 days. If he's right, you've saved 2 lives and exposed a flaw in the system. The math is simple. Marcus closed his eyes. For a long moment, he said nothing. The elders waited. The crowd waited. The entire fortress seemed to hold its breath. When Marcus opened his eyes, something had shifted behind them. Not quite hope, not quite mercy. Something harder, more pragmatic. 3 days, he said. His voice carried the weight of command. Final. Absolute. Dr. Kane will examine both women under guard supervision. The ritual of verification will be performed according to the old customs. If he proves fertility, the sentences are commuted and the laws reviewed. If he fails, all 3 face execution at dawn on the 17th. He looked at Dashiell. You're betting your life on this outsider. Dashiell nodded. I've been betting it for 3 years. What's 3 more days? Cade stood abruptly. His chair scraped across concrete, harsh, angry. This is a mistake. Sentiment over survival. We'll regret this. He walked out. 50 people followed him. Loyal, convinced, certain that mercy was just another path to extinction. The remaining 350 stayed. Marcus gestured to the guards. Release them, move them to the ritual chambers. Guarded. No contact with the general population until verification is complete. The shackles came off. Seraphine stood first. Her legs shook. 3 hours kneeling on concrete, but she didn't fall. Marin rose more slowly, her hands flexed. Testing, remembering what freedom felt like. Dashiell watched them both. These 2 women. Condemned. Defiant. Alive for 3 more days because he had opened his mouth. He had saved his sister too late. Maybe he could save them in time. The ritual chambers occupied the fortress's oldest section, pre-collapsed military bunker. Converted to sacred space when survival became religion and fertility became the only sacrament that mattered. The walls were painted with symbols, ancient, predating the collapse. Fertility goddesses from civilizations long dead. Mother Earth, life givers, protectors of the continuation. In the center of the main chamber stood an altar, concrete slab covered with salvaged fabric. Red, the color of blood, the color of life. 2 smaller rooms branched off, private chambers for the condemned. For the 3 days of waiting, of preparation, of ritual cleansing before the verification. 4 guards stood outside, loyal to Marcus, weapons ready, not to keep Seraphine and Marin in, to keep Cade's faction out. Inside the main chamber, Dashiell unpacked his kit, 4 notebooks filled with data from 37 communities. Fertility rates, mortality statistics, treatment successes and failures. 3 years of walking through the wasteland collecting the scattered knowledge of a broken world. Dr. Alara Cross entered slowly. Arthritis in her knees. She carried a wooden box, old, worn, inside the tools of verification. Salvaged ultrasound equipment. Pregnancy tests hoarded like treasure. Herbs for treatment. The fragments of medical science preserved through 40 years of darkness. She set the box on the altar. Looked at Dashiell with sharp clinical eyes. You understand what the ritual of verification requires. Dashiell shook his head. I know medical examination. I don't know your rituals. Alara's lips pressed into a thin line. The ritual has three parts. First, the cleansing, 3 days of herbal preparation. The body must be purified, toxins expelled, the vessel made ready. You will prepare the compounds. I will supervise. She gestured to the private chambers. Second, the examination. On the third day before the council, and any who wish to witness you will examine both women, publicly. The ritual must be witnessed to be valid. You will document your findings. I will verify them. Her voice dropped, became almost gentle. Third, the judgment. If you find evidence of fertility, the council votes. If you find none, execution proceeds. She met his eyes. The ritual exists because we cannot afford doubt. We cannot afford lies. Everything must be seen. Everything must be verified. Privacy is a luxury the dying world cannot afford. Dashiell felt his stomach turn. Public examination in front of the council, in front of anyone who wanted to watch. That's barbaric. That's survival, Alara corrected. We had 3 women claim pregnancy to avoid execution. Faked symptoms, stole pregnancy tests, lied until the lies became obvious. The ritual prevents that. Transparency prevents fraud. She began unpacking the wooden box. Herbs, roots, dried plants. Do you know how to prepare fertility compounds? Dashiell looked at the ingredients, recognized some: spearmint, licorice root, cinnamon, red raspberry leaf, Vitex, the natural anti-androgens and hormone balancers that pre-collapse research had validated. Yes, but these take time, weeks to show effect. We have 3 days. We work with what we have. Seraphine emerged from one of the private chambers. She had been given ritual clothing, simple white cotton, loose, meant to symbolize the blank slate, the body waiting to be proven or condemned. She looked at the altar, at the symbols on the walls, at the apparatus of judgment. I remember when my friend Lara went through this, 5 years ago, declared barren, executed 3 days later. Her voice was flat, emotionless. She was 26, died screaming, begging, saying she could feel a baby inside her, that she knew she was pregnant. But the ritual showed nothing. She turned to Dashiell. Was she lying, or did your science miss something? Dashiell had no answer. Marin emerged from the other chamber. Same white clothing, same blank expression. She looked at Seraphine, then at Dashiell. What do we do first? The cleansing began immediately. Alara prepared the first compounds, tea made from red raspberry leaf and nettle, purifying, preparing the uterine lining, flushing toxins accumulated from years of survival rations and recycled water. Both women drank, bitter, earthy, medicine from a dead era administered in a dying world. Dashiell asked questions, took notes, building medical histories that should have existed years ago. Seraphine, tell me about your menstrual cycles. Frequency, duration, regularity. She answered mechanically. 28 to 35 days, moderate flow, occasional cramping. Nothing unusual except, I'm late, she said quietly. 6 weeks. Dashiell's pen stopped moving. 6 weeks. I thought it was stress. Jonah died 2 months ago, my fiancé, Marcus's son. Her voice cracked slightly. We were supposed to get married, have children, build a life. She touched her stomach. Flat, unchanged. After he died, my cycle stopped. I thought it was grief, the body shutting down. I didn't think. She didn't finish. Dashiell's hands shook slightly. He pulled out the salvaged ultrasound machine. Battered, pre-collapse tech, powered by a hand-crank generator. Lie down on the altar. Seraphine hesitated. The altar, the place of judgment, the place where women laid bare to prove their worth or accept their worthlessness. She lay down. Dashiell applied gel from a salvaged tube, placed the wand on her abdomen. The screen flickered to life in grainy black and white. Alara moved closer, squinting at the screen. Dashiell adjusted the wand, searching, scanning, looking for the impossible, the miracle, the there, small, dark, unmistakable, a gestational sac. His breath caught. Seraphine, he said softly, you're pregnant. The words hung in the air. Impossible. True. Seraphine's hand went to her stomach, her eyes filled with tears. That's Jonah's J. Based on the size and development, approximately 6 to 7 weeks gestation. Conceived in late September. The timeline fit. Jonah had died on September 20th, 2 months ago. They had been together the week before his death, planning the wedding, planning the future, making love in stolen moments between survival and duty. And now a cluster of cells multiplied inside her. Jonah's genetic legacy, Marcus's grandchild. The future they had thought died with a bullet through the chest. Alara stared at the screen, her clinical detachment cracking. "I need to verify independently," she said, her voice rough. She took the wand, moved it herself, checking, confirming, looking for fraud, finding only biology. "Confirmed," she whispered. 6-week pregnancy, single embryo, heartbeat detected. She looked at Seraphine, at the tears streaming down her scarred face. "You were never barren. You were never tested at the right time." Seraphine sat up, wiped her eyes, looked at her hands, these hands that had killed, that had saved, that now rested on a stomach carrying life. "I'm going to be a mother." Marin stood frozen, watching, her face unreadable. Dashiell turned to her. "Now you." Marin lay on the altar. The ultrasound showed no pregnancy. Her uterus was empty, but Dashiell wasn't looking for a child. He was looking for signs, clues. The body's tells. He asked questions, wrote answers, medical history, menstrual patterns, symptoms she had ignored because survival left no room for paying attention to discomfort. Irregular periods, 45 to 60 days between cycles. Facial hair that she shaved every morning. Weight gain around the middle despite constant physical labor. Acne along her jawline. Mood swings that she attributed to stress. The pattern was clear. He pulled back, looked at her. "You have polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS." Marin blinked. "What?" "Hormonal disorder. Your ovaries produce too much testosterone. It prevents regular ovulation. Makes conception difficult, but not impossible." He started mixing compounds. Dried herbs from his pack. Spearmint, licorice root, cinnamon, plants that grew wild in the ruins. Common weeds that pre-collapse medicine had proven could balance hormones naturally. "This isn't a cure, but it's treatment. 3 days of intensive dosing, high concentration. Your body will respond quickly or not at all. If it works, your hormone levels will normalize. Ovulation may occur within 72 hours. He met her eyes. "You're not barren, Marin. You're undiagnosed. There's a difference." She stared at the herbs, at the tea brewing in a salvaged cup, at the possibility that her body wasn't broken, just neglected. Why didn't anyone check? Her voice was small, young, the voice of every woman who had been told she was defective without anyone bothering to look deeper. "Because looking requires knowledge," Dashiell said, "and knowledge died with the old world. We're trying to rebuild it, one examination at a time." Alara handed Marin the tea, steam rising, bitter medicine. "Drink 3 times daily, morning, noon, night, for 3 days. On the 3rd day we test." Marin drank, forced down the bitterness, tasted hope for the first time in 5 years. Seraphine watched from the side, her hand still on her stomach, processing, recalibrating, seeing 8 years of Marin's quiet devotion through a new lens. "We might both live," Seraphine said softly. "We might both die," Marin replied. "Cade won't accept this." Dashiell pulled out a Polaroid camera from his kit, one of 3 shots remaining. He photographed the ultrasound screen, the evidence, the proof. "This is irrefutable. Seraphine is pregnant. That's biological fact. The council will have to acknowledge it." "Will they?" Marin asked. "Or will Cade say you impregnated her yourself, that this is fraud?" The question hung heavy. Alara spoke quietly. "The fetal development is consistent with 6 to 7 weeks. Dr. Kane arrived 5 days ago. The timeline doesn't match. The pregnancy predates his arrival." She looked at Dashiell. "But Cade will argue anyway. He'll claim manipulation, chemical intervention, witchcraft, anything to avoid admitting the law is wrong." Dashiell sat down, exhaustion finally catching up. 3 days of captivity, 3 hours of the most important examinations of his life. 2 women saved, or maybe condemned. Then we prepare for a fight. Night fell over Ironwood Fortress. Guards changed shifts. Fires burned in oil drums. 847 people settled into their routines. Eating, sleeping, surviving. In the ritual chambers, 3 people who should have been dead were very much alive. Seraphine lay in her private chamber, hand on her stomach, feeling for movement that wouldn't come for months. Jonah's child, their child, growing inside her while she had stood trial for the crime of being barren. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so terrible. She thought of Jonah, his last words. I'm sorry I won't get to meet them. He had known, somehow, or hoped, or dreamed. Now she carried his legacy, the part of him that would outlive the bullet, the part of him that would see the future he would never know. She whispered into the darkness, I'll tell them about you, every day. They'll know their father was brave, loved fiercely, died protecting others. A promise. To a ghost. To a future. To herself. In the other chamber, Marin drank her third cup of bitter tea, forcing it down, feeling nothing different yet. But then change took time. Healing took time. Hope took time. She thought about Seraphine, pregnant, Jonah's child. The child Marin would never give her. The thought should have hurt. Instead, it felt like relief. Seraphine would live. That was what mattered. The specifics of how were secondary. Marin had loved Seraphine for 8 years, quietly, without expectation, watching her grieve Jonah, watching her nearly die today, watching her discover she carried life while condemned for barrenness. Love didn't require reciprocation. It just required itself. Constant, patient. There, in the main chamber, Dashiell wrote in his notebooks, documenting everything, creating backup copies, preparing for the public ritual in 2 days. He thought of Emma, of walking alone for 3 years, of arriving at Ironwood empty and finding something that felt like purpose. These 2 women, condemned, proven fertile, alive because he had asked one question. Are you sure that question had cost his sister her life? No one had asked it in time. Now it might save 2 others. He heard footsteps, turned. Marcus Drummond stood in the doorway, alone. No guards, no witnesses. His eyes found Dashiell. Is it true she's pregnant? Dashiell stood slowly. Yes, 6 to 7 weeks gestation. Healthy, developing normally. Marcus's knees buckled. He caught himself against the doorframe. 58 years of holding himself together, cracking. Jonah's child. Yes. Marcus closed his eyes. Tears leaked through, silent, devastating. I was going to kill my grandchild. Dashiell said nothing. What was there to say? Marcus straightened, wiped his face roughly. I sat there, in that council chamber, knowing I raised her, knowing Jonah loved her, knowing I should fight for her, and I said nothing. His voice broke. I let them condemn her because I was too afraid to show favoritism, too afraid to put personal feelings above the law, too much of a coward to stand up when it mattered. He looked at Dashiell. You did what I should have done. You questioned, you challenged, you risked everything to ask if we were sure. He gripped Dashiell's shoulder hard. Thank you for being braver than me. Dashiell met his eyes. The ritual's in 2 days, public examination. The council will vote. Cade will fight every step. Let him, Marcus said. His voice had steel now. Command, certainty. I failed her once. I won't fail again. He turned to leave. Stopped. And Kane, when this is over, when she's proven and the law changes, you stay. Ironwood needs people who ask questions, who challenge assumptions, who choose truth over comfort. He walked out, footsteps fading into darkness. Dashiell stood alone in the ritual chamber, surrounded by symbols of fertility, of verification, of judgment. In 2 days, Seraphine and Marin would stand before the council, before the fortress, before everyone who wanted to watch. They would be examined, measured, judged, and depending on what the ritual showed, they would live or die. Dashiell looked at his equipment, at the ultrasound photo, at the herbs brewing for Marin's treatment. He had 3 days to prove that survival and humanity weren't opposites. That knowledge was stronger than fear. That asking, are you sure, could change the world. The ritual of verification would begin at dawn. Dawn came cold on November 15th, 60 hours left, the first day of the cleansing. Seraphine woke to nausea, not fear, not stress, biology, her body adjusting to the cluster of cells multiplying inside her. Jonah's child, 6 weeks old and already causing trouble. She stumbled to the waste bucket, vomited, wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, morning sickness. The textbook symptoms she had missed, attributed to stress and grief instead of pregnancy. Marin was already awake in the main chamber, sitting cross-legged, drinking the bitter tea Dashiell had prepared. 4th cup, methodical, disciplined, treating it like ammunition. Fuel for a war her body was fighting without her conscious control. Dashiell slept in a chair, notebooks open on his lap. He had worked through the night, documenting everything, writing backup copies of his findings, preparing for the fight he knew was coming. A knock at the door, sharp, urgent. Iris, the young guard, stepped inside. Her face was pale, tight. "Dr. Kane, Commander Drummond wants to see you. Now." Marcus Drummond's quarters were sparse. A bed, a desk, a single photograph in a cracked frame. His son, Jonah, 27 years old, smiling. Taken 3 months before a Raider's bullet had punched through his chest and ended the future. Marcus stood with his back to the door, looking at that photograph. He did this every morning. A ritual, a reminder. A wound he refused to let heal because healing meant forgetting. Daschle entered. 2 guards flanked him, not restraints, just presence. A reminder that he was still a prisoner, still an outsider, still disposable. Marcus didn't turn around. "My son loved her," he said. His voice was rough, unpracticed at emotional honesty. From the time she was 16, followed her around like a lost dog. She didn't notice him for years, too focused on training, on proving herself worthy of the name I gave her. He finally turned. His eyes were red-rimmed, sleepless. Then one day she looked up and saw him. Really saw him. Not my son, not her childhood companion. Just Jonah. A man worth loving. He sat down heavily. The weight of command, the weight of fatherhood, the weight of loss. They had 3 months. 3 months of being engaged, planning a wedding, planning children, planning a future. His voice broke. He died holding her hand. His last words were about the children they would have, the family they would build, the life they would make. Marcus looked at Daschle. "She's carrying his child." Yes, the only piece of him still living in this world. Yes, Marcus stood, walked to the window, looked out at Ironwood Fortress. 847 souls. His responsibility. His burden. "Cade came to me last night, said you're a fraud, that you doctored the evidence, that the pregnancy is a trick to save her life." "The pregnancy is real," Daschle said quietly. "Dr. Cross can verify it independently. The ultrasound doesn't lie. The gestational development is consistent with conception in late September. I arrived 5 days ago. The timeline doesn't match." Cade doesn't care about timelines. He cares about order, control, the system he built to keep us alive. Marcus turned. He lost 3 daughters. Watch them starve to death in his arms. Do you know what that does to a man? What it costs to watch your children die because there's not enough food? "No," Daschle admitted, "but I know what it costs to lose a sister because people were too proud to admit they might be wrong." Silence stretched between them. 2 men shaped by loss, by the weight of the dead. "The public ritual happens tomorrow afternoon," Marcus said. "Doctor, Cross will verify your findings in front of the council and any fortress residents who wish to attend. If she confirms the pregnancy and Marin's treatable condition, the council votes on whether to commute the sentence and review the law." He stepped closer. "But Cade has 250 followers. People who believe mercy is weakness. People who lost children and think cruelty is the only language survival speaks." His eyes held warning. "If the vote fails, all 3 of you die at dawn the next day, and Cade will make sure you die slowly, publicly, as a warning to anyone else who questions the system." Daschle met his gaze. "I understand the stakes. Do you—" Marcus's voice dropped, became almost gentle. "You've disrupted a system that's kept us alive for 20 years. You've given people hope that might turn to rage when they realize how many women died unnecessarily. You've created a fracture in this fortress that might never heal." He gripped Daschle's shoulder. "I raised Seraphine. She's the closest thing to a daughter I'll ever have, and I sat in that council chamber and said nothing while they condemned her to death. Do you know why?" Daschle waited. "Because the law applies to everyone, even the people I love, especially them. Because the moment I show favoritism, the moment I put personal feelings above survival, this fortress falls apart." His voice grew firmer. "But you've given me a way out, scientific proof, evidence, a reason to save her that has nothing to do with emotion, a reason that preserves the law's integrity while changing its outcome." He released Daschle's shoulder. "Don't make me regret this. Don't make Jonah's death meaningless by letting his child die in the womb because you weren't thorough enough." The ritual chambers felt smaller in daylight. The walls pressed in, the ceiling hung low. 3 people waiting for a verdict that would come in 36 hours. Marin drank more tea, forced down food she didn't want. Her body needed fuel, needed strength. The next 72 hours would demand everything. Seraphine paced, unable to sit still, energy crackling through her nervous system. Fight or flight response with nowhere to fight and no way to flee. Dashiell checked his equipment, the ultrasound machine, the pregnancy tests, the herbs for Marin's treatment. Everything he needed to prove his case. Everything that could be destroyed in a single act of sabotage. We need to talk about what happens if we lose, Seraphine said suddenly. Marin looked up. Dashiell stopped organizing. If the council votes against us, we have maybe 12 hours before execution. We need a plan. Escape, Marin asked. Where? Seraphine gestured at the walls. We're 300 miles from the nearest known settlement. Winter's coming. We'd die of exposure before we got 50 miles. Fight against the entire fortress, 3 of us versus 800. Seraphine shook her head. Suicide. Dashiell spoke quietly. We don't plan for defeat. We plan for victory. We prepare the evidence. We present it clearly. We trust the process. Seraphine laughed, bitter, sharp. Trust the process. The same process that condemned us in the first place. The same process that gave us a chance to defend ourselves, Dashiell countered. Marcus could have executed you immediately. He didn't. That means something. It means he's conflicted. Not that he'll save us. Marin set down her tea, stood, moved to the small window, barred, but offering a view of Ironwood's central courtyard. People were gathering, word had spread, the public ritual, the outsider who claimed the law was wrong, the 2 condemned women who might be innocent. They're watching, Marin said, not just the council, everyone. This isn't a trial anymore, it's theater. She turned to Dashiell. You need to be perfect. No hesitation, no doubt. Dr. Cross will be looking for any reason to discredit you. The crowd will be looking for any sign you're lying. Cade will be looking for any weakness to exploit. Dashiell's hands shook slightly. He pressed them flat against the altar. I've done thousands of examinations before the collapse. This is just medicine. This isn't medicine, Seraphine said. This is politics. This is survival. This is the end of the world deciding whether knowledge matters more than fear. She stepped closer, looked him in the eye. And you're going to convince them anyway, because you have to, because we're counting on you, because failure isn't an option. It wasn't a question. It was a command, a battlefield order from a warrior to an ally. Dashiell thought of Emma, her last letter. They say I'm barren. They say I'm worthless. I just wish someone would check. No one had checked, and she had died. I won't let you down, he said. Seraphine smiled, cold, predatory. Good, because if we die, we're taking Cade with us. The afternoon brought visitors. Dr. Alara Cross arrived with supplies, more herbs, additional pregnancy tests, ritual oils used for anointing before the public examination. She set everything on the altar, looked at Seraphine and Marin with clinical detachment. Tomorrow you will be bathed in these oils, ceremonially cleansed. The ritual demands purity, transparency, nothing hidden, nothing faked. Her voice was matter of fact. You will wear white, stand before the council, before the crowd. Dr. Kane will examine you. I will verify his findings. Everything will be witnessed. She met Seraphine's eyes. I delivered you 29 years ago. Your mother died in childbirth. I cut you free and breathed life into your lungs. Emotion flickered across her weathered face. I don't want to watch you die, but I will verify truth above all else. If Dr. Kane is wrong, I will say so. If he's right, I will confirm it, regardless of consequence. Seraphine nodded. I wouldn't want it any other way. Alara turned to Marin. Your mother was my student. Before the collapse, she was brilliant. Could have been a surgeon. But the world ended, and brilliance wasn't enough to save her from radiation sickness. She touched Marin's shoulder, brief, uncommon for her. She would be proud of what you've built. The defenses, the strategies, the mind that saves lives through calculation. Marin's throat tightened. Will you vote to save us? I will vote based on evidence, Alara replied. Nothing more, nothing less. She left, footsteps echoing in the stone corridor. Seraphine looked at Marin. She'll vote against us if the evidence isn't perfect. I know. We need the evidence to be perfect. I know. They sat in silence, processing, preparing, waiting for tomorrow. Night fell, the second night in the ritual chambers. Dashiell worked by lamplight, reviewing his notes, checking calculations, preparing his presentation for tomorrow. Seraphine and Marin sat together in the main chamber. The white ritual clothing laid out for tomorrow, the oils for anointing, the apparatus of judgment. Marin spoke first, quiet, vulnerable. I need to tell you something. Before tomorrow, before we might die. Seraphine turned, waited. I'm in love with you. I have been for 8 years. I never said anything because you loved Jonah. And then he died and you were grieving and it never seemed like the right time. Her voice was steady, matter of fact, the same tone she used for tactical assessments. But we might die in 2 days. And I don't want to die without you knowing. Seraphine stared at her, processing, recalibrating, seeing 8 years of quiet support and loyalty through a new lens. I knew, she said finally. Marin blinked. What? I've known for years, the way you looked at me, the way you always stood between me and danger, the way you... Seraphine smiled, sad, gentle. I knew. And you never said anything. Because I loved Jonah and I didn't love you, not like that. She paused. But not loving you back doesn't mean I didn't value what you felt. It's complicated. Marin nodded, not surprised, not devastated, just acknowledged. Complicated seems to be our default state. Dashiell cleared his throat. Both women looked at him, realized he had been sitting there the whole time, witnessing this confession. Sorry, he said. Should I leave? Seraphine laughed, sharp, bright, the first genuine laugh in days. No, stay. You're part of this now, whether you like it or not. She looked at both of them, Dashiell with his notebooks and his dead sister's ghost. Marin with her 8 years of silent love and her newly diagnosed treatable condition. We have 36 hours. We need to be smart, united. Whatever Cade is planning, he won't wait long. Agreed, Marin said. She stood, paced, thinking. He'll try to discredit the evidence, attack your credibility, maybe attempt to sabotage the examination results. Dashiell nodded. I need to secure the ultrasound photo, make additional copies if possible, document everything. If Cade destroys the evidence, we have nothing. I'll talk to Marcus, Seraphine said. He's conflicted, but he raised me, and now I'm carrying his grandchild. Maybe I can use that. She met their eyes. We're not just fighting for our lives anymore. If we prove this works, we prove the system is broken. That changes everything. Marin's expression shifted. From tactical to strategic. From survival to revolution. Every woman who's been executed under the Fertility Act, every family destroyed, every life wasted because no one bothered to check. We're not just saving ourselves, Dashiell said quietly. We're building a case for systemic change. The weight of that settled over them, heavier than their own survival, bigger than 3 people in a concrete room. They were 36 hours away from either vindication or execution. And outside the walls, Cade Merrick sat in the Western Barracks and wrote a message that would turn this from a ritual into a war, November 16th. Dawn, 30 hours left, the day before the public ritual. Seraphine woke early. The ritual bathing would begin in 2 hours. The ceremonial oils, the white clothing, the preparation for tomorrow's examination. She stood before the small mirror in her chamber, looked at her body, 29 years old, scarred from combat, strong from survival, and now carrying life. Her hand went to her stomach, still flat, still hiding the secret. Tomorrow everyone would know. Tomorrow the world would change. Marin was already drinking her tea, 8th cup in 2 days. Her body responding, cycles regulating, hormones balancing. She could feel the difference, subtle but real. Dashiell reviewed his presentation one final time. The words he would speak, the evidence he would show, the case he would make for knowledge over assumption. He had one shot, one public ritual, one chance to prove that asking questions was more important than accepting answers. Alara arrived at 800 hours, brought 2 assistants, carried heated water in salvaged basins. The bathing begins now, both of you, separately. The ritual demands cleanliness, purity, preparation. Seraphine and Marin were led to different chambers, stripped of their clothing, washed by hands that were clinical, professional, impersonal. The oils came next, anointed on skin, scented with herbs, rosemary for remembrance, lavender for calm, cedar for strength. The white clothing, loose, simple. The garments of judgment. When they emerged, they looked like priestesses or sacrifices, depending on perspective. Dashiell saw them and something clenched in his chest. These 2 women, prepared for ritual, for examination, for public display of their most private biology. It was barbaric. It was also their only chance. Afternoon brought the first sign of trouble. Iris burst into the ritual chambers, breathing hard, eyes wide. Dr. Kane, Cade's men tried to enter the medical storage, tried to destroy your equipment. Dashiell's blood went cold. Did they? No, Marcus's guards stopped them. But there was a fight. 3 of Cade's men wounded, 1 of ours dead. The fortress was fracturing, the factions splitting, violence bubbling beneath the surface. Marcus arrived 30 minutes later, face grim. Cade is escalating. He knows the ritual is tomorrow, knows if you prove fertility, his entire worldview collapses. He looked at Dashiell. I'm doubling the guards. No one enters these chambers except myself, Dr. Cross, and approved witnesses. But Kane? He paused. Cade has 250 followers. I have 350. If this turns violent, we're looking at civil war. Seraphine stood. Then we don't let it turn violent. We prove our case tomorrow. Convince the crowd. Change enough minds that Cade's faction becomes irrelevant. And if we can't convince them, Seraphine's eyes hardened. Then we fight, and we make sure the survivors remember why. Marcus studied her. This woman he had raised. This warrior who refused to submit. This mother carrying his grandchild. Jonah would be proud of you. Seraphine's composure cracked. Just slightly. Just enough. I wish he was here to see them. Our child. He is, Marcus said, in the only way that matters, through what he left behind. He turned to leave. Stopped. Tomorrow when the ritual happens, I'm voting to save you. Regardless of what the evidence shows, I'm done pretending that laws matter more than people. Seraphine's eyes widened. That's not... I know, Marcus interrupted. It's favoritism. It's sentiment. It's everything a commander shouldn't do. But I've spent 2 months drowning in guilt for not saving my son. I won't spend the rest of my life knowing I failed to save you too. He walked out, shoulders squared, decision made. Dashiell looked at Seraphine. That's good. We have his vote. We need 4 votes to commute the sentence, Marin said. Marcus is 1. Who are the other 3? Dashiell counted on his fingers. Dr. Cross will vote based on evidence. If we prove it, she's with us. That's 2. The other 5 elders. 3 are Cade loyalists. They'll vote against us regardless. 2 are uncommitted. Elder Reeves and Elder Santos. Marin's tactical mind engaged. We need both Reeves and Santos. That gives us 4. Enough to commute. How do we get them? Seraphine smiled, sharp. We give them evidence so overwhelming they can't deny it. We make the ritual so public, so transparent, so irrefutable that voting against us becomes political suicide. She looked at Dashiell. How many pregnancy tests do you have left? 3. Use one on me tomorrow. During the ritual, in front of everyone, let them see the positive result in real time. And me, Marin asked. You drink your tea, hope your body responds. And tomorrow we test you too. Marin's hands shook slightly, holding the cup, the bitter medicine. What if I don't test positive? Then we still have Seraphine's pregnancy as proof the law is flawed, Dashiell said. 1 proven case is enough to demand review. But 2 proven cases makes it impossible to ignore, Seraphine finished. They looked at each other. 3 people, 30 hours from either freedom or death, preparing for the performance of their lives. The public ritual would begin at 1400 hours tomorrow. And in the Western Barracks, a rider prepared to leave, carrying a message that would bring war to Ironwood's gates. To Black River Fortress, Commander Garrett Stark. Ironwood weakened by sentiment. Outsider spreading sedition. Laws failing. Come at dawn, November 17th. Eliminate corruption. Restore order. The rider left in darkness. Cade watched from the window. If Kane succeeded tomorrow, Ironwood would fracture. Sentiment would creep in. Mercy would weaken them. They would fall. But if Kane died, if the women died, if the old order was maintained, then Ironwood would survive. Hard, cold, brutal, but alive. Cade had lost everything once before. He would not lose again, even if it meant burning Ironwood to save it. November 17th, dawn, execution day. The day Seraphine and Marin were supposed to die. Instead, they stood in the ritual chambers, bathed, anointed, dressed in white, waiting for the public ritual that would determine if they lived or died. The council hall had been prepared. The altar moved to the center, positioned so the entire crowd could see. Transparency, verification. The ritual demanded witnesses. At 1300 hours, the fortress began to gather. 400 people pressed into the hall. Standing room only, guards at every exit. Tension thick enough to choke on. Cade sat in the front row with his faction. 250 believers, arms crossed, eyes hard, waiting for the outsider to fail. Marcus sat on the council platform, 7 elders, 7 votes that would decide 3 lives. At 1400 hours exactly, Alara Cross stood. We are gathered for the public ritual of verification. Seraphine Blackwood and Marin Steele stand accused of barrenness. Dr. Dashiell Kane claims they are not infertile but undiagnosed or untreated. Her voice carried, formal, official. I will independently verify his findings. The council will then vote on commutation. She gestured, bring forth the accused. Seraphine and Marin entered, white clothing flowing, heads high, defiant even in ritual submission. They approached the altar, stood before the crowd, 400 eyes watching, judging, waiting. Dashiell stepped forward, set up the ultrasound machine, the screen facing the council and crowd. Maximum transparency. Commander Drummond, members of the council, people of Ironwood. His voice steadied. I present evidence that Seraphine Blackwood is not barren, that she is in fact 6 to 7 weeks pregnant, conceived before my arrival, carrying a child fathered by Jonah Drummond 2 months before his death. A ripple went through the crowd. Shock, confusion, hope. Marcus's face went pale, then red, emotions warring. Dashiell gestured to Seraphine. Seraphine, please lie on the altar. She did, exposed, vulnerable, but her eyes stayed hard. Dashiell applied gel, placed the wand, the screen flickered, and there, for everyone to see, the gestational sac, the tiny heartbeat, the undeniable evidence. 6-week fetal development, Dashiell narrated. Single embryo. Heartbeat detected at 138 beats per minute, consistent with conception in late September. The crowd murmured, a wave of sound, disbelief giving way to recognition. Cade shot to his feet. Impossible. She's been tested monthly for 3 years. She's never... The testing stopped 2 months ago, Dashiell interrupted. After Jonah's death, the council assumed permanent failure. You stopped checking. And in that gap, conception occurred naturally. He looked directly at Cade. You condemned her for being barren while she carried life. That's not justice, that's negligence. Dr. Cross stepped forward, took the wand herself, checked, verified. Her clinical detachment cracking. Confirmed, she said, her voice rough. Pregnancy, first trimester, healthy development. She looked at the council. Seraphine Blackwood was never barren. She was never tested at the correct time. The law failed, not her body. Marcus stood slowly, tears running down his face. That's my grandchild. His voice broke. My son's child, growing inside the woman I condemned to death. He looked at the council, at the crowd. I vote to commute the sentence, not because of favoritism, because the evidence is irrefutable. She is fertile. Shale, the law is wrong. Cade's faction erupted, shouting, protest, chaos. Cade's voice cut through. This proves nothing about the law. One woman, one pregnancy. That doesn't mean the system is broken. Then let's test the system again, Dashiell said. He pulled out a pregnancy test, expired by 15 years but still functional. Seraphine, in front of everyone, take this test. She stood, took the test, walked to the private chamber. 3 minutes later emerged, held up the stick, 2 lines. Positive. The crowd saw, the council saw, everyone saw, undeniable, public, verified. Elder Reeves stood. I vote to commute. That was 3. Dashiell turned to Marin. Now you. Marin approached the altar. No pregnancy yet, but Dashiell wasn't looking for a child. He was documenting treatment. Marin Steele presents with polycystic ovary syndrome, a hormonal disorder causing chronic anovulation, difficulty conceiving, but treatable. He showed the herbs, the compounds, the treatment protocol. I began intensive therapy 2 days ago. High concentration anti-androgens. If successful, her hormone levels have normalized. Ovulation may occur within the treatment window. Dr. Cross examined her, palpated her abdomen, asked questions, reviewed symptoms. Diagnosis confirmed, PCOS. The condition is well documented in pre-collapse medical literature. Treatment is viable. She looked at Dashiell. But has treatment worked? Dashiell held up the second pregnancy test. We test now in front of everyone. Marin took the test, walked to the chamber. The fortress held its breath. 3 minutes felt like hours. She emerged, held up the stick. 2 lines, positive. The crowd exploded, not in riot, in shock, in the sudden terrible understanding that they had been killing women for a condition that could be treated with common plants. Marin stared at the test, at the impossible, at the miracle. I'm pregnant, she whispered. Treatment worked, Dashiell confirmed. 48 hours of intensive hormone therapy. Her body responded. Ovulation occurred. Conception followed. He looked at the council. Only women are fertile. Both were condemned for barrenness that never existed. The Fertility Act is built on incomplete science, on assumptions instead of examinations, on fear instead of knowledge. Dr. Cross's voice rang out. I vote to commute. Both women, immediately. 4 votes, enough. Cade stood, shaking with rage. This is corruption, Western medicine, pre-collapsed poison. We survived 40 years without this. We don't need it. An old woman in the crowd stood, frail, 80-something. You executed my daughter 6 years ago. She had the same symptoms. Irregular cycles. Facial hair, just like what he described. Her voice cracked. You killed her for being broken, but she wasn't broken. You just never looked. More voices, rising. My sister, my wife. They killed her. The crowd turned, not on Seraphine and Marin, on Cade, on the system, on the law that had murdered their loved ones. Elder Santos stood. I vote to commute, and I call for immediate repeal of the Fertility Act. 5 votes. Marcus raised his hand, all in favor of repealing the Fertility Act of 2067. 5 hands rose, immediate, certain. Opposed, Cade and his 2 loyalist elders. The vote is 5-3. The Fertility Act is repealed, effective immediately. The council hall erupted. Celebration, grief, rage. A fortress processing 40 years of brutal survival and discovering some of the brutality had been unnecessary. Cade walked out. 250 people followed, silent, grim, convinced that mercy was weakness and weakness was death. They headed to the Western barracks. Seraphine watched them go, calculated the numbers, the implications. We just started a civil war, she said quietly. Marin nodded. Yes, but we won the first battle. Night fell. Ironwood Fortress transformed. No longer one community. Now 2 camps occupying the same space. Eastern quarters loyal to Marcus and evidence. 400 strong. Western barracks loyal to Cade and tradition. 250 strong, no violence yet. But tension coiled like a spring. In the ritual chambers, Seraphine, Marin, and Dashiell sat together. Exhausted, victorious, uncertain. What happens now? Marin asked. Now we prepare, Seraphine said. Cade won't accept this. He'll... The door burst open. Not guards. Attackers. 3 men. Cade's loyalists, armed with knives, meant to look like an accident. The condemned women killed by persons unknown. The outsider murdered in chaos. Seraphine moved first. 29 years of combat training. She caught the first man's knife hand. Twisted. Bone snapped. He screamed. Marin took the second. Less trained but stronger. Elbow to throat. He went down gagging. The third lunged at Dashiell, the soft target. Dashiell threw the altar table. 30 pounds of steel caught the attacker's chest. He fell. Guards burst in. Marcus's loyalist. They dragged the 3 attackers out. Iris stood in the doorway, breathing hard. Cade ordered this. I heard him. Make it look accidental. Marcus arrived, face carved from stone. Arrest War Chief Cade Merrick. Charge conspiracy to commit murder. The guards left, moved toward the Western barracks. They found them empty. Cade and all 250 followers were gone. On the eastern wall, a guard found a message. Spray painted. Black River comes at dawn. Choose survival or sentiment. November 17th, 400 hours. Marcus stood on the command wall, looking east, at the dust cloud rising on the horizon. Black River Fortress. 400 warriors. Cade had invited them. Promised them Ironwood's resources in exchange for eliminating the corruption. Betrayal on a scale that stole breath. Marin joined him, already drawing, charcoal on paper. Defensive positions. How long? 3 hours, maybe 2 if they force march. We have 350 defenders. They have 400, plus Cade's 250 if they join them. We don't know if Cade's people will fight for Black River, Marin said. They might be planning something else. Marcus looked at her. Can you hold the eastern approach with 50 soldiers? Yes. Then take them. Seraphine gets 50 for the northern canyon. I'll hold the main gate with the rest. He turned to Dashiell. Can you fight, Doctor? Dashiell thought of 3 years wandering, of knife scars from raiders. I can build. Give me 2 hours and access to chemistry supplies. I'll give you weapons. Preparation moved with desperate speed. Marin positioned her 50 along the eastern wall. Rifles, limited ammunition, 3 shots per person. Wait until 200 meters. First volley front ranks, second volley 100 meters, third volley free fire, then knives. Seraphine took the northern canyon. Narrow, defensible. She placed fighters on elevated positions. Rocks, debris, gravity as artillery. Daschle worked in the chemistry lab. Mixed chlorine and ammonia. Created gas bombs. Primitive. Deadly. He showed fighters how to throw them, how to retreat upwind, how to turn science into survival. At 0600 hours, Black River appeared. 400 warriors, led by Commander Garrett Stark, 60 years old, scarred, a warlord who had consumed 4 fortresses. He rode a salvaged motorcycle, wore riot gear, looked at Ironwood and saw weakness. His voice boomed across distance. Ironwood, surrender the outsider and the barren women, or we take everything. Marcus stepped to the wall's edge. Ironwood doesn't surrender, not to tyrants who mistake cruelty for strength. Stark smiled. Then you die. He raised his hand. The assault began. The first arrow struck at 300 meters. Too far. Wasted. Marin waited, calculated, watched Black River advance. 200 meters. First volley. Fire. 50 rifles. One sound. Thunder. 15 Black River warriors dropped. Stark's voice forward. 150 meters. Second volley. Legs. Fire. 25 more down. 100 meters. Third volley, free fire. 30 more fell. Rifles went silent. Empty. 330 Black River warriors. 50 meters from the wall. Marin drew her knife. Now we fight. Northern Canyon. 70 Black River warriors split from the main force, flanking through the narrow passage. Seraphine waited. Patient. Silent. The column entered. Single file. Compressed. She raised her hand, brought it down. Drop. Boulders. Concrete. Scrap metal. Tons of debris. The canyon became killing ground. 40 warriors crushed. 30 retreated. Northern flank secure. But Seraphine heard the eastern wall, screaming, hand to hand. She grabbed 15 fighters. East wall, now. They ran. Eastern wall had become chaos. Black River warriors poured over, met Ironwood defenders in brutal close combat. Marin fought with a spear. No training, just fury. She thrust, parried, broke a man's jaw, killed 3 more. Blood everywhere. Ironwood and Black River. Impossible to distinguish. A warrior grabbed her from behind, knife to throat. She broke his nose with her head. Spun. Elbow to temple. He dropped. 3 more replaced him. She was going to die. Then Seraphine arrived. 15 fresh fighters. Seraphine leading. Her knife found throats, arteries, vital organs. She reached Marin. Back to back. You good? Yeah. You better now. They fought. 2 women refusing death. Cutting, stabbing, surviving. Black River fell back, regrouped. Then Garrett Stark climbed over the battlement himself. Stark was massive. 6'4", 260 pounds, fire axe in hand, pre-collapsed steel. He saw Seraphine, recognized her from descriptions. The pregnant one, causing all this trouble. Seraphine circled, knife ready. I'm the one who's going to kill you. Stark laughed. I like you. Shame. He swung, fast for a big man. The blade whistled. Seraphine ducked, rolled, slashed his ribs, shallow. The riot gear protected him. He swung again. Backhand. The handle caught her shoulder. Bone cracked. She stumbled. He raised the axe. Marcus Drummond stepped between the blade and his daughter. Time stretched. Marcus, 58, unarmed, unarmored, just standing there. The axe fell. It caught him in the chest, bit deep, split sternum, shattered ribs. Marcus looked down, saw the axe buried in his body, saw his blood. He looked at Stark, smiled. Not today. He grabbed the axe handle, held it, prevented extraction. Seraphine screamed, primal, wordless, pure violence. She came up from the ground like lightning, knife up under Stark's armor. Found the gap, punched through, ripped. Stark's intestines spilled. He fell, massive. Final. Seraphine caught Marcus. They both went to knees, the axe still jutted from his chest, blood pulsing. Dad, the word, first time, last time. Marcus's hands found her face, bloody fingerprints. My daughter, should have said it before. His eyes found her stomach. Protect my grandchild. I will. Change the law, all of it. Make this mean something. He said, I promise. His breathing failed, wet, stopping. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough. You were, you just did. Marcus smiled, eyes glazed, fixed on something beyond. He died in her arms. Round them, the battle turned. Stark dead. Black River leaderless. They broke. Retreated. 80 survivors fled east. 320 Black River dead. Ironwood casualties, 67 dead. 120 wounded. Victory. At terrible cost. From the western shadows, Cade emerged, leading his 250, not joining Black River, joining Ironwood. They hit the Black River retreat, crushed them. Cade found Seraphine, knelt beside Marcus's body. I brought them back. I know it doesn't. Why? Because Stark was wrong. I was wrong. Marcus chose humanity over cruelty, even when it cost everything. Tears on his scarred face. I'm sorry for all of it. Seraphine looked at him. This man who had prosecuted her, betrayed them, returned and saved them. You don't get forgiveness, not from me. Cade nodded. But you get a chance to rebuild, to serve, to prove you're more than your worst choice. She stood. I'm taking command. Anyone who disagrees can leave. No one moved. She looked at Cade. You'll carry bodies, dig graves, do whatever I tell you. Maybe in a few years I'll decide you've earned something other than my contempt. Yes, Commander. The title landed. Real. Seraphine Blackwood, 29, pregnant. Commander of Ironwood. The funeral pyres burned for 3 days. 67 defenders. Returned to ash. Marcus Drummond's pyre brightest. Longest. Seraphine spoke. He was law. He was order. He chose both over love until the end. When it mattered, he chose differently. Her hand on her stomach. 7 weeks now. He died so the future could live. That's the Ironwood we'll build. Survival and humanity. Together. The fortress listened. New laws passed. Medical examination before judgment. Treatment before execution. Knowledge before fear. Dashiell established a clinic. Trained apprentices. Spread knowledge like seeds. 8 women labeled barren received treatment. 7 became pregnant. The 8th was confirmed infertile. But valued, not executed. Respected for contributions instead of condemned for biology. The knowledge network began. 6 clans joined. Requesting alliance, seeking medical knowledge, Ironwood grew. 917 souls by spring. 73 births in 6 months. May morning. 38 weeks. Seraphine's labor. 12 hours. Normal. Healthy. Dashiell delivered. Dr. Cross assisted. A girl. 6 pounds, 8 ounces. Perfect. Screaming. Seraphine held her daughter, Emma, for the sister who should have lived. Dashiell wept. 3 weeks later, Marin gave birth. A boy, 7 pounds, strong. Marcus, for the man who chose redemption. Cade attended both births. Standing guard outside. Not forgiven, but present. 45 years later, November 17th, 2132, Ironwood Fortress. 3,000 souls, anchor of the Montana Coalition. 12 fortresses united. The council hall preserved as museum. 3 elderly figures sat on stage. Seraphine Blackwood, 74. Gray braids, scar faded. Retired commander, mother of 3, grandmother of 7. Marin Steele, 76. White hair, still strong despite arthritis. Chief engineer emeritus, mother of 4, grandmother of 11. Dashiell Kane, 79. Thin, wire frame glasses still taped. Medical college director. Trained 200 physicians. Saved 12,000 lives. Anniversary ceremony. 500 attendees. Emma Blackwood Kane spoke. 23. Named for 2 ghosts. 45 years ago, my mother and Marin were sentenced to death for being barren. They weren't barren, they were undiagnosed. She gestured to the 3 elders. These 3 changed that. At the cost of 67 lives, at the cost of Commander Drummond, who chose love over law. She held up a ledger. 12,000 lives saved through medical intervention in 45 years. Each has children, grandchildren, a ripple we can't fully calculate. Silence. Names read. 67 voices that never aged. Dashiell stood, slowly. My sister Emma died at 27, executed for barrenness. She had endometriosis. Treatable. No one checked. His soft voice carried. I walked 3 years trying to save women like her. I arrived here too late to save Emma. Just in time to save Seraphine and Marin. Pause. The lesson isn't about medicine. It's about questioning. About asking, are you sure, before making irreversible decisions. He looked at empty chairs, reserved for ghosts. Emma, Jonah, Marcus, they died because people were too certain. Don't be certain, be curious. He sat. Seraphine stood next. My father died saving me 45 years ago today. He stood between me and an axe. Finally chose love over law. Voice cracking. He called me daughter with his last breath. 18 years I waited. One moment I received it. Hand to stomach. Empty now. I was pregnant when condemned. Carrying his grandchild. They were going to kill us both. She looked at Cade, 90 years old, sitting front row, gray, broken, redeemed through service. The man who prosecuted me became my most loyal servant. 45 years of penance. He'll die never fully forgiven, but respected. Cade nodded, wet eyes. Change costs blood, but staying the same costs more. She gestured at the thriving fortress. We're 847 surviving through brutal laws. Now we're 3,000 thriving through knowledge. She sat. Marin stood last. I loved Seraphine for 8 years in silence. She didn't love me back, but she made space for my love. Let it exist. Looking at Seraphine, at Dashiell. We three are not traditional, not simple, but we're family. We raise children together, change the world together. Touching her heart. I had PCOS. It took Dashiell 3 hours to diagnose what no one checked for in 5 years. Treatment was weeds. Voice stronger. How many died because no one looked? How many families destroyed because certainty felt safer than curiosity? She sat, 3 elders, holding hands. Seraphine center. Marin left, Dashiell right. 3 people sentenced to death 45 years ago, who split a fortress, started a war, lost a father, and changed the world. Emma concluded, this isn't a happy story, it's a true one. Change requires breaking, growth requires pain, but the alternative is staying frozen in systems that kill us. Looking at her mother, at Marin, at Dashiell, these 3 refused death for being broken. They proved they never were, and broke a system that needed shattering. Audience filed out, thoughtful, carrying history. The 3 remained, alone. You good? Seraphine asked. Yeah, Marin said. You tell. Seraphine looked at Dashiell. Yeah, never better. Dashiell smiled, thought of Emma, of 3 years wandering, of arriving broken and leaving whole. We did it, changed the world, one examination at a time. They stood together, 3 elderly figures, afternoon light, outside children played. Families thrived. The knowledge network spread. 47 communities, medical colleges, laws built on evidence, 12,000 lives saved. All because 3 people refused death for being different. All because one man asked, are you sure? All because a fortress chose to break its laws instead of its people. Sunset over Ironwood. November 17th. Anniversary of execution that never happened. Seraphine, Marin, and Dashiell walked home. Slowly. Old bones. Together. Always together. The barren verdict overturned 45 years ago. Its legacy eternal.